from AECOM will be taking us through that. So we are going to switch to Malcolm and Helena. And obviously this is our first presentation this morning with 2 speakers, so fingers crossed that everything is working. Welcome both of you to Sharing Best Practice.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you.
Right.
I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can, Helena. Thanks.
Great.
Right. So we just to make a bit of a change from Death by PowerPoint, we thought we'd try and approach one of the topics in a bit more of a fireside chat. So I've got my coffee ready, and well, I'm sat next to the radiator. I don't have an open fire, sadly. So what we're looking to address are some of the, what I call the 5 W's relating to this project. So that's the who, where, when, why, and what aspects of what we've been doing, and also a bit of the hows. So, Helena, if you want to crack on to the first slide.
Yeah.
Just to provide a bit of context on the project. So the collaborative research is between Highways England, ourselves as MPA and Eurobitume, and you heard from David earlier. We've actually been doing collaborative research, I reckon, somewhere in the region of 40 years. I've been at MPA and its predecessors for 20 years, and I've got copies of research reports, collaborative research reports going back years before that. So it's a proven device that the industry and our clients can get together and work on themes of common concern and hopefully provide some answers. So in terms of our 2020 project, we'll just show you the formal briefing. There's the collaborative research project to undertake an independent and fundamental review of current practice and develop a process to improve the assessment, efficiency, cost effectiveness of materials. That's our first subtask, full of buzzwords. And the second subtask was to derive end-of-life assessment for innovative pavement materials, including waste-derived materials. So that's it in a very formal sense, as I said, full of buzzwords. So we'll have a look first at the approach taken by AECOM and the partner organisations and those projected outcomes. So again, I'll introduce Helena from AECOM, who will seek to answer the key aspects of my possibly vague questions. So we'll start by running through the project teams. Who are the key participants? And maybe there's some faces there we already recognise.
Yeah, so thank you, Malcolm. Yeah, as Malcolm said, we are a partnership with Highways England, MPA and Eurobitume. These are just some of the faces involved in the project. From AECOM, we have Dario and Janice in the background, and myself trying to coordinate the project. And then we have also other faces from Highways England. You can see Robin, Arash, Paul that just joined Highways England. And even if we have more people involved from MPA and Eurobitume, well, the main representatives are Malcolm and David, and you heard from both of them. And these are more or less the main faces, but again, we have all the people behind us working on this, and it's been a really nice collaborative research and project.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a rogues gallery there, I think, and Paul there is a bit of a splitter. He was with AECOM participating in the project and then defected to Highways England, so at least that gives us more continuity in that respect. So that's who. Now to maybe some of the why are we doing this project. So Helena, can you tell us how AECOM and the team have taken the briefing forward to define the task in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so basically the aim, as you can see on the screen, has been to develop an assessment process to see how we can assess new materials that are being proposed to be used in pavements. I have to say that at the beginning, the main aim was to assess waste products to getting into asphalt, because it is what is happening now more often. But while we were working on this, we realized that it was better to go a step backwards and see these the big picture and future-proof it, basically. And we said, okay, why only waste-derived products or byproducts and not any innovative materials should be assessed before it goes into a road? And why only in asphalt? Why not also materials that could, or components that could go into hydraulically bound materials or unbound materials? We don't know what is coming in the future, and that's why it's innovation. So what we try to do is to put that scope a little bit further and include any innovative material that is being proposed to use in pavement, like a really general scope, and it's been quite difficult to make sure we're covering everything. And what we wanted to do is to basically make sure that this new process supports innovation. We're not aiming to put a barrier. We're not aiming to stop innovation. What we want to do is to make sure that the innovations that are being proposed to use in pavements are appropriate and they're worth pursuing, basically. And to do that, what we tried to do, and what we're doing because we're still working on it, is to develop what we're calling a filtering protocol. And the aim is to put in one document all the aspects that someone proposing an innovation or someone that comes through a new proposed material, they have to look for. So all the expertise around innovation to put it into one filtering protocol.
Great. So I mean, for me, in summary, I think it's about not specifically trying to keep stuff out that we don't initially like the sound of, but giving assurance that innovations are safe and sustainable for future use and ongoing use. Again, my perspective. So move on now to another W question, who's going to be using the protocol? How do we define our stakeholders, our interested parties? Who should be picking this up and using it?
Yeah, so when we started developing this filtering protocol, we thought it is a guidance document. So what we thought was to define two main roles when using this protocol. The first one is a user, is someone that will use the protocol to see what information is to be collected to prove that an innovation is good for pavements. Well, a person, an organization, or a group of organizations. We cover all of those. But then in the other side, there would be a reviewer of this, all this information. So to see if the proposed material is worth going forward or not. And we also said, okay, this user and this reviewer, taking into account our industry and how we are set up, we mainly thought that there would be different types of user and different types of reviewers depending on the innovation stage. So, for example, we thought at the beginning, when someone is proposing something completely new and is in really early stages of development, we will have what we call an innovator. So it's someone proposing that new material. And what we thought is at this stage, when that material is completely new, that innovator is probably looking into the supply chain for support to produce this new material or to produce a standard material with this new additive or this new component. So in that case, the innovator would be the user of the guide. The supply chain could be the reviewer, for example, to see if they want to put that new product into their processes. However, as the innovation goes forward, and if we go into doing laboratory trials and we move into doing trials on the network, then is when we think that the asset manager or the asset owner comes into play. Even if we think that all conversation and all three parties should be involved from the beginning in the conversations, probably the asset manager or the asset owner would be involved once the supply chain wants to develop that material, and what they will go from a reviewer to a user point of view and collect that information and present it to the asset manager and say, look, this is a new product, we believe it works, and we want to try it in your network. And then the asset manager would be that reviewer that is checking all the information and seeing if they like the material and they want to try it.
Great. So, I mean, again, from my aspect behind the project, it's about encouraging transparency and collaboration through all those stages, so everybody's talking the same language and looking at the same aspects that maybe they haven't considered. So that probably takes us on to some of the maybe what ifs. I'm sure some of the audience are already thinking of examples of innovations that they've been asked to consider and maybe how this approach will work for them. So what does getting through or getting stuck on the filter mean for an innovator?
Well, as I already said, this would be a guidance document. So at the end of the day, the decision of going forward with a new innovation or not would be supply chain, if they want to produce it or not. The protocol will never force an asphalt plant to produce anything. The same way as the asset owner or asset manager, if they don't want to try something, the protocol will not force them. What the protocol is trying to do is to see if there's reasons for stopping that innovation or not. So mainly, if you comply with the protocol, what it's saying is that there's not red flags, there's nothing highlighted to be a worry, and that it looks like is a good material that can be appropriate for the development in the pavement industry. So there's nothing reaching out saying that this is wrong, there's something that we need to consider. So you can go through the normal process of innovation and do your trials and see if you get all the advantages you're supposed to be getting with this new material. And the other way around, if you don't comply with the protocol, it's not that the innovation is not good. It may mean that you just need to collect more information. And I'm going to put here in the screen some of the reasons why the material may not pass the protocol, but it can be just there's some concerns about health and safety, and maybe it's just a matter of changing the way it is processed, the material is processed, or maybe where it's been proposed to be used is not the best way. It may be in another type of layer or in another type of material. So again, it's not the end of the innovation. We're not, the protocol doesn't want to stop it, but it's highlighting red flags and areas of concern that should be checked before going forward, basically.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is that it's not a blocker to innovation. It's a method to assess confidence and assurance of innovation going forward. So it may initiate some more iterations for the innovator or the supply chain, but yeah, it's definitely not about stopping things. So that's some of the thinking behind the protocol. What does it look like in practice for a user? How will they use it, and maybe what will it look like in practice?
So, well, I'll try to show a little bit how this is planned to work, and I'll go really high level because there's a lot of information in there and a lot of work behind. So it's just to give a little bit a high level introduction to the protocol. So right now it looks like this is it's planned to be a Highways England document that is going to sit in Highways England Innovation Hub. And this is still draft and we'll need to finalize it. But what we've done, we've identified 4 main stages for this protocol. The first one would be to identify the technology readiness level. And probably some of the audience are thinking that, well, Highways England already has this technology readiness level process and other documents to prove innovation. And what we want to say is that this filtering protocol is not a substitute to those. The aim is to work with those documents as well that are already there and that people may be already familiar with them. And what we're trying to put is everything just in one document to make it easy for someone have a look through all the aspects that need to be considered. So as I said, stage one will be to identify the technology readiness level. That is something that Highways England already uses. And they have recently published the pilots and trials guidance, and that would be also used. The aim is to identify where your innovation stays, in which technology readiness level, to understand what are the next steps you need to follow. And some of the questions that are asked in the protocol, they may be answered in a different way depending on that stage of innovation. So we will include notes for guidance of all these into the protocol to guide the user, answer the questions, and the reviewer see if the answers are valid or not, depending on that stage. Then the second stage would be to characterize that innovation. We believe it's really important because sometimes the only way of seeing if something is worth or not is comparing it to what it already exists. So it's really important to understand what is being proposed, if it's an additive, if it's a completely new mixture or things like that. So we thought that was important to be there. And then the main stage of the protocol is what we call stage 3. We have a flowchart that I will show in a minute and give just some tips of what is the aim. But this stage, what is basically telling the user is asking some questions and guiding through this flowchart, telling that person if they have to collect information of or which checklist they need to answer. And this checklist would be in the appendices of the protocol. And then the final stage would be for the reviewer to review these. We will have, as I said, notes for guidance for the reviewer as well. And is trying to understand if the questions are answered in the proper way and if the information provided is enough or not. So this is how the flowchart that I just talked about looks like. Because this project was initially created to assess waste derived materials. We thought it was a biggie because it's something that is currently happening a lot. And we thought it was really important, as you can see there at the top of the flowchart, to put here the end of waste or byproduct assessment. And this is basically saying that a waste cannot go into a road. It has to have an end of waste. It has to be a product. And this is nothing new. This is something that is already there. It's just putting the environmental agencies' guidance and protocols into here to make sure, again, that we have everything in one document. And here, well, you can, if you get at the end of answering these questions and going through the checklist, if you get that the proposed material is still a waste, then, as we said, is not the end of the innovation. Maybe there's something wrong with the processing or with some of the documentation, and we give the opportunity to the innovator to go back, review why it hasn't passed, and resubmit the information again. But it's highlighting that there's something that it won't make the product a product. It's still a waste, or is not a byproduct yet. However, if all the answers are questioned positively and the checklist and the information is provided, what we would do is a pavement industry specific assessment. And here, what we try to do is to make all the questions that are applicable to pavements, and we create checklists regarding health and safety, environmental, material processing, technical requirements, and a market assessment. And all these questions are specific for pavements. And depending on how these questions are answered, you have two outcomes. Or everything looks good and it looks like it can still be developed and you can go through the technology readiness level process and go to the next step, or maybe it's a laboratory trials, or you can go to network trials. And if some of these questions are answered negatively, let's say, again, you will be highlighting areas of concern and areas that should be checked or amended, or maybe more information is needed. And I know this is a lot of information, and what I want to make the big picture is that, again, we're trying to put together all the expertise on all the aspects to be considered while developing a new material. hopefully this gave a little bit of a flavor of what the protocol looks like.
Yeah, that's great, Helena. Obviously, it is very complex, and this is the simple version. Once you go into those questions and checklists, then you get into the real deep detail. Again, from the industry perspective, we want to make sure that unintended consequences didn't arise, so that our production units didn't have to become permitted and registered as waste management units. We can do production, but we're not necessarily waste managers. And also to highlight that as an industry, we're already pretty good at dealing with our own waste. So we want to optimize and maximize our own small circle of recycling without always providing answers for other industries' problem wastes. Generally, we see that if an industry has a difficulty with its own waste, then it looks for an alternative place to hide it. I'll say that cautiously. So what we're seeking to achieve is that the roads and our networks become linear quarries, recycling our own stuff, but not linear landfills. And that's part of the approach we've taken in this. So I think perhaps a number of the audience will have specific questions on, I've got this waste, can I use it? How do I use it? Will it get through the protocol? Clearly we can't answer, will it get through at this moment? This is more than a 2-minute assessment. So I don't suggest anybody starts dropping those questions in right now. We're open to questions now, but I'll just start with one. Has the team done any dry run scenarios with any imaginary or even real waste or other innovations through the protocol as yet?
Internally, we have. So as AECOM, as part of our work, when we were developing the filtering protocol, we took a couple of examples of proposed materials with the information we had at that moment. And we went through the protocol, but we haven't done that wider yet. It's something that within the collaborative research may be done at the end once we believe the filtering protocol is completely ready. But it's something that is still in discussions, and is an option to maybe circulate it to a selected audience to check a couple of examples.
Great. Well,
Malcolm,
thanks, Helena.
And Helena, we've got a couple of other questions that have come in, if that's okay, if I can put to you. One of the questions we had, that going back to your slide 7, you referred to EOW regulations, and we wondered whether or not you might be able to expand on what you meant by EOW.
Sorry, that's end of waste regulations. So it's the environmental agency regulations mainly. So again, we're not putting anything new here. We're just putting things that they already exist, and anyone working with waste should be aware of. But maybe someone working on an asphalt plant or in a concrete plant, they may not be aware of because maybe we're technical people and I wasn't aware of this before I started working on this. So it's outside our expertise, but it's still there, and it's something to say, okay, someone expert should be looking at this if we have a waste, basically.
Okay, another question that we've had come in, that obviously at the moment this is a guide. Are you anticipating or expecting that this protocol will become part of the rules? And if so, that then links on to the questions that I know that you tried to address with regards to innovation and sort of future innovation.
Well, I think what we're trying to do, we don't think it can be a rule in terms of, as what I previously said, we won't be able to ever force the supply chain to produce something they don't want to produce. But what we're trying to do with this protocol is to put a transparent process to help justify why to go or why not to go with an innovation. And if the supply chain or the asset managers, they don't want to try something, I think it would be really, really difficult to force them. But here would be a protocol saying to have that conversation, or to at least have a transparent way of saying, okay, we checked all these and it looks okay, so why you don't want to do it? And there would be a conversation there asking that reason. And the other way around, if the protocol is saying there's some concerns, I don't know, if the asset manager is trying to force that reduction of a material, the supply chain, they can say, look, we're not doing it because of this, this, and this. And it's a transparent process, and these are all the flags, all the red flags that have been highlighted. But for now, it's going into the innovation hub of Highways England, and it's not planned to be a mandatory thing. I mean, Highways England can ask for this being done, but again, it is not the aim to force innovation or to block innovation. Is giving the framework. And I don't know, Malcolm, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, again, we've always sought to align with the current framework, the current systems that would accept or prevent specific innovations. As you showed, you've got the technology readiness level. So the protocol would effectively help define what level of readiness the Topcon and the agency, what Highways England view as the appropriateness for their network's use. And if it becomes normal, then it gets written into specifications which either explicitly allow or explicitly deny the use of an innovation.
Okay, we've had a question from a local authority representative. Are you able to intercept materials that would normally be heading to landfill?
So that's the filter protocol includes questions about the future of that innovation in terms of if it will be recyclable at the end of life, or if it will need to go into a landfill, or if it would be a dangerous waste or a hazardous waste. So there's questions about that into the filtering protocol as well. So again, if the answer is yes after, so it's, for example, an additive going into asphalt, and then at the end of life, that asphalt will become a hazardous waste and won't be able to be recycled, that would be a red flag, for example. I don't know if that was the question. Exactly, but
there's another question that's come up about the link between the protocol and procurement. I don't know whether or not either of you have got any thoughts on that.
I think in the broader sense of innovation, particularly in Highways England, there are already procurement drivers for innovation. They're not always specifically mandated to say you won't win this contract if you don't include an innovation, for example. But the agency certainly drives and encourages the industry to innovate generically. We're trying to drill down into what they want us to innovate on specifically sometimes. So hopefully this process will become part of that. And there are other methodologies as well. You've got Innovate UK, for example, who provide guidance and advice to innovators as how to get new innovations, be they waste or otherwise, into industry in a broader sense. So, as I say, it's trying to align with things that are already in place from our specific view of highways improvement.